BS intro. All right, we are live right now. Let me jump off this intro. Hopefully give us a chance to get our brother Shelley on. For everybody nobody's jumped on yet, so I'm trying to improve on this intro. Let's do this. Politically Conscious returns today at 1 p.m. as we discuss our merit-based country as Defense Secretary Hegseth fires Black 4-star general for a white 3-star retiree. Pastor Jamal Bryant refers to MAGA as runaway slaves. Insult or not? Elon and Doge finds fraud, or did he really? Joy Reid fired from MSNBC. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. What's up, brother Emil? Thanks for being on this thing with me for episode 16. We back at it again.
Wow, we doing it, man. We doing it.
Keeping it going. Got some amazing feedback from your sister. What's her name? I want to acknowledge her real quick because I want to make sure we give proper intros. But the last time I jumped into the thing, I'm like, we 15 shows in, we don't need intros. But to her point, somebody first time seeing it, we need to know who everybody is. So I want to shout her out, if you will. But for everybody out there, my name is Montoya Smith, as you can see on the stage. I am your mental activist. I've basically brought a concept I've been doing for years, as you see behind my head, mental dialogue, where we were basically raising the consciousness of the African-American community. And I basically got asked to apply it to politics, and that's why we're called Politically Conscious, if you will. So I'm the moderator on this show, and I got my brother Jamal Bryant, who I say is on the left. I don't know if I always say, I know he don't claim it that way, but he's definitely, I seeked him out because of his perspective on this show. But if you will, Emil, you are a political consultant. Give people your background so they know that you're not just on here dropping an opinion without some actual experience when it comes to this political thing.
Yeah, I am a consultant. I have worked with a political candidate who was running for office for Congress. I have advised other candidates at the local, state, and federal level for Senator, Congress, and local elections. My job is to be a communicator. So they ask me how to message and how to look at different issues. I don't like spin. I do like truth. So part of my responsibility on this show and other shows is to ensure that, to the extent I can, unpack the propaganda, because when I advise a candidate, I tell them the more truth you tell, the more likely you are to resonate with a voter. And people really appreciate when they're just tell them the truth, and they can deal, but it's really something that people won't just tell the truth. So that's one of the jobs I try to bring to every political engagement. Just tell what's happening.
And that's the reason I got you, because again, you're like myself, you like to cut to the facts and put them on the table. You know what I mean? So sometimes we can see facts and see them different. That's one thing. But unfortunately, when it comes to propaganda in this political game, it's basically people skew and don't give you the full context. And so I always, as a mental activist, context and perspective is what I try to bring as well. So I do appreciate that. I will say that in you giving your background today, I love the fact that you say you tell candidates to be forthright, if you will, because I would assume most consultants are pushing people to play toward the propaganda, which I would say is why we receive so much in the media. So I definitely appreciate that being your approach. For everybody out there, what we do here is we play cuts and we respond to those cuts. These are different political cuts around the country, if you will. And so I'm going to play some cuts and we're going to get some response. And hopefully we'll get our brother Shelley, who's on the right of this thing. Again, I'm the moderator. I kind of come from a middle position. Emil's from the left, if you will. And hopefully we'll get our brother Shelley on. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But if not, we'll just keep rocking out. And here he comes. So perfect timing. So we're going to go into this first cut, and we'll get Emil's response out of this cut and Shelley's afterward. All right, let's get this thing started.
Talking about Afghanistan and the botched withdrawal, have all the generals or command staff that were involved with the withdrawal been fired or relieved of duty?
Well, that's a great idea. I'm not going to tell this man what to do, but I will say that if I had his place, I'd fire every single one of them, Pete. That's a very good question.
Well, it's a question we've thought a lot about. We're doing a complete review of every single aspect of what happened with the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan, and plan to have full accountability. It's one of the first things we announced at the Defense Department for that reason, sir. Certainly, General Raising Kane, who's on his way in, was not a part of that. Instead, it was a part of leading the effort against ISIS by untying the hands of warfighters and finishing the job properly, and then bringing our troops home. So we're taking a very different view, obviously, than the previous administration, and there will be full accountability.
I don't see big promotions in that group, and I think they're going to be largely gone. I know the man on my left. I think they're going to be largely gone. That was a horrible display.
So, kind of leading with what we promoted, Hegseth fires, if you will, 4-star General Brown, right? And he's speaking to the guy. He speaks in that cut to the guy he brought in, 3-star General Kane, but that ruffled a lot of feathers, removing the 4-star, if you will, for the 3-star. But you also hear them highlighting in their cabinet meeting that a big part of the reason, we know it's not the only reason, but a big part of the reason was the difference of how we pulled out of Afghanistan and what this administration wants to do. And that's, you hear Hegseth speaking to why he brings in General Kane, and basically, and to a degree, fires General Brown and doesn't let him finish out his term, which is not normal. Emil, your thoughts to what you're seeing, then I'll go to Shelley afterwards.
Absolutely, it's not normal. You know, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is supposed to be apolitical. We know it is to an extent, but you know, you always work with the team that the other guy appointed, because you're showing that it's not about political. It's not a political. Sorry, thank you. There's no political obligation here. You know, someone like General Brown, who's been in the military for 40 years, has matriculated through every administration during that time, which means, especially when he became a general, and generals are very political, it really is apolitical in the sense that you're navigating the Department of Defense. You're not necessarily navigating one party or another. That is something that I think reflects. So if you go back to the Afghanistan withdrawal, it's like they have no memory. The Afghanistan withdrawal was set up by President Trump during his first term. He handed a turd to President Biden, who did not polish that turd well at all. The execution of that was awful. We will say that, but the setup was just as bad as the execution. So the people who were in charge, then you have Secretary Austin, who was in charge of the DOD, but you had General Milley, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who was appointed by Trump. So you have two administrations who failed to manage the withdrawal properly, but you're only hearing about one side. This is one of the problems, is that this is a selective amnesia, if you will. And I'm very frustrated that we're just firing people willy-nilly instead of looking at the holistic picture and going back to the first President Trump's first term and then doing a proper root cause analysis to figure out what happened. I'll tell you, part of the problem is that we didn't think through all of the elements of the withdrawal that President Trump during his first term set up. And certainly when President Biden came in, he said, we're out, we're going to honor the deal, and we left. And it was an ugly withdrawal. It was clearly not as smooth as it should have been, but it wasn't just President Biden, nor was it just the people who were in charge at that time. It was two administrations worth of people who made a mess of things.
Shelley, your thoughts? And again, Emil, of course, lays it out from his understanding. I kind of want to lean into General Brown being fired if fired is the word people are using, and General Kane being brought in. But your thoughts to what the clip you just saw as well?
Well, I mean, I think it's what happens. Guy gets elected president, he brings in his own people. It happens. It is what it is. That's how it works. The idea that Trump left the bad deal for Biden, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the DOD, though, they were responsible for executing the plan to get out of Afghanistan, not the politicians. The politicians said, we want to get out. The generals got together and said that we're going to get out. That was a botched withdrawal. Everyone knows it was botched. Everyone knows it was horrible. That's up to the generals. It is what it is. The presidents, neither President Biden nor Trump, neither one of them went in there and planned the withdrawal. The generals did. Trump first put CQ Brown as the head of the Air Force. Actually, it was Trump's appointment of him to head the Air Force, which made him the first African American to head a single division or a single arm of the military, which was a historical pick. So, you know, he put him in a position to be selected for Joint Chiefs of Staff. He takes over as president. He gets to bring in who he wants to. My biggest complaint about it was a 4-star to a 3-star. Race, all of that taken out of it. That's the only thing. The perception that it was a 4-star to a 3-star. But other than that, I completely get it. I got what he did. I have no problems with what he did. I'm sure Mr. General Brown, I'm sure he anticipated something like that happening because he knows that's politics, you know?
So let me ask this, and we're on a politically conscious show, so I'm finna insert race into this conversation because that's what the public, in a sense, was going back and forth about. And I think y'all have basically laid out that technically this is what happened. However, that's not how we've talked about it in the public. And so right before I played this cut, you and I, Shelley, we talked about the imagery of that, right? With the president coming in from day one, talking about a merit-based country, if you will. So at a minimum, it seemed like it at least would have been 4-star to 4-star, if you will. But one of my friends that is in the military said the one thing that is abnormal is, quote unquote, finishing out a term. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but is it normal or not normal for it to happen in this manner? I don't know. I'm asking you guys because I figured y'all would know better than me.
I just think that, I mean, I don't know what's normal about this presidency, to be honest with you, right? And that's not a negative. That's just the truth. There's nothing normal about this presidency. There's nothing normal about picking at a guy every single day about what he does or who he picks or you know what I mean? There's nothing normal about any of this. So I'm not sure that, you know, the normalcy is, you know, the FBI's term, an FBI director's term is 10 years. He got rid of that guy for somebody else. You know what I mean? Donald Trump learned one thing in 2017 to 2020. He learned,
have loyalty.
Right. He learned that there are people within the government who are there to protect the government and not do the will of the person who got elected. And so that's and that has been a thing that, I mean, that is what it is. Look, none of us, if Montoya had a company, right, and he's running this company and he's looking for someone to run it, like his vice president, if you will, right? Montoya's not going to go out there and find someone that hates him to run his company. He's not going to find someone that doesn't like him. He's not going to find someone that doesn't know him. Montoya's going to go to the people who he knows will have his back, will protect the company, and do what he says as the owner of the company. And so it's just like anything else. When a coach gets fired, he doesn't come on board. Most coaches don't come on board as a head coach of a new team and uses all the same assistants that the other coach had. He usually gets rid of the staff and brings on his own staff. I don't like the term loyalty because that implies somehow people are just going to do what you say. No, but I want people around me that are not going to stab me in the back. And that's what happened the first time.
No, it makes sense. Let me jump in real quick because we got to get to these cuts.
Yep.
And so I want to bring the race factor in because that's what's being talked about with General Brown. So let me play this cut and it'll obviously bring it in. Shelley, this is a clip you actually sent me, and this is what some of people's concerns were.
Many of you may be wondering what I'm thinking about the current events surrounding the tragic death of George Floyd.
General, do we have too many white officers in the Air Force?
Senator, what I really look at is the quality of all the officers that we have, and we look at the aspect of everyone who's qualified, meets the qualifications, is promoted. And
I would agree with you, but that answer is not consistent with your August 9th memo. In your August 9th memo, you said that you signed on to that there should be a reduction, essentially, of about 9% of the white officers. That's 5,400. We have 5,400, too many white officers. And this is the real impact, I think, of this desire of the administration. I'm saddened to see this in this memo, of this obsession with sort of race-based politics being interjected into our military. How did you come up with the percentage of 67.5% of the officers should be white? And how did you come up with 13% should be black? And how did you come up with 10% should be Asian? And how did you come up with 1.5% should be American Indian and Native Alaskan? How did you come up with 1% being Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander? And how did you come up with 15% of our officers should be Hispanic or Latino?
Senator, that is based on that memo is on application goals, not the actual makeup of the force. And those numbers are based on the demographics of the nation.
Okay, well, all right. There's 10% of our country's Asian American. So is that where you came up with it? Just a percentage of the population?
Essentially.
Because right now the actual percentage, I mean, this is where this is a ridiculous conversation, to be perfectly honest. Because why didn't you come up with, or are you going to come up with the percentage of the overall force? Did you contemplate that? Of how many, black Americans should be in the Air Force? Or how many Asian Americans should be in the Air Force? Did you contemplate the total force percentages?
Senator, what we looked at was the aspect of providing opportunities for anybody who wants to serve.
Listen, if that were the case, if that were what was in this memo, I wouldn't be asking you these questions. But we have in a memo signed by you that you think right now there are too many white officers. And this is a blanket statement. And so I could go down the.
So I was surprised just now to find out that, because I didn't know this, that Trump had actually appointed, if you will, General Brown. So that was just something, just kind of just as a side note for me. But in watching that, Shelley, I know you had sent that to me, and I wanted to share, which is always the context that's lost, and even how that guy is questioning the general. So I want to get into that. But before I even say that part, Emil, I absolutely understand, based on what I'm hearing from the current administration and what their goals are, that alone shows me that they're on the line. And I'm not saying that alone is why he got let go. Like, I'm not personally saying that, but I can understand, based on what quote unquote was being propagated as the goals are, I can see how they may look at General Brown and say he's not aligned with us. And I'm not talking about right or wrong. I just can see that difference in alignment, if that is part of the reason why he was let go, which I know for most people in our community, we feel like you quote unquote push merit base and get rid of DEI, and not that DEI applies to a cabinet position, but the optics looks like you just got rid of the black guy. Like, that's just calling it what it is. Last thing I'll say is give the context, and Emil, I'll let you jump in. So the context, the senator is manipulating the context by when the general says this is application goals, turns around and says, well, have you contemplated what the actual force should look like? And then ridicules him while acknowledging the general is not saying this is what the actual force should look like, and then ridicules him for application goals. And so at the end of the day, you and I have both worked in missions for college before. And at the end of the day, if you want to increase any group, you have to have more applications to have enough qualifications. The one thing that I do feel like in that moment, General Brown definitely got wrong in his memo, because the guy's reading his memo, is the way we politically correct say the very same thing that he said is we need more minorities. He wrote it down as we need less white officers. Those are essentially the same thing, but I would say he wrote it down in an unintelligent way, and that's how they called him out. And now the guy manipulates the context to make him look bad. But he still got selected, so it is what it is. Go ahead, Emil.
So I'm reading the memo, and I don't read that.
Okay.
It says, these goals are aspirational, aligning resources to invest in our long-term objectives, and will not be used in any manner that undermines our merit-based processes. That is a direct quote. I'm reading it. You are directed to develop a diversity and inclusion outreach plan aimed at achieving these goals no later than 30 September 2022. So it is a complete misrepresentation of that memo by the senator during the entire discussion. If you go by the numbers, Black people in the military are overrepresented based as a percentage of the population writ large. In the officer force, there is a major underrepresentation, which that's what General Brown was acknowledging. There's an underrepresentation. Every Secretary of Defense for the past 30 years has said very clearly they would like to see the force reflect the people. That's a very normal proposition. In fact, it's a healthy way to look at the military, because we've had race riots until the 70s in the Department of Defense because there was a misrepresentation of the leadership and how people were treated. So when we talk about DEI, we're also talking about all of the things that led up to these policies. These policies didn't just come out because a Black person said, plow, this is what we want. These policies have history, and all of this history led us to say the most effective way to build a fighting force is to have it reflect what the people look like across the country generally. That means in the enlisted corps and in the officer corps, you should have some goals that help you make that true. Does that mean they're under or unqualified people that they're recruiting? Absolutely not. It means you find the diamonds that are out there. And the problem with that entire line of questioning to me is that you didn't read the memo. You just spoke whatever you wanted to based on it. It doesn't say anything about reducing the number of white officers. It says these are our goals. It is aspirational, and the resources we direct will never, ever take away from the merit-based processes that allow these goals to be met. I don't know how he got it wrong, except that he wanted to.
No, we know how he got it wrong. That's why we say if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. So me thinking he's quoting, right? He's quoting out of the memo. I said, well, that part should have been said this way, because I think he's quoting. He goes as far as to not only take parts of it, but he misrepresents, which is a whole nother level of manipulation, which is the point. We get rid of the propaganda. So they're using that video to say, hey, this might be why. I'm talking about this is on social media, why General Brown is being let go. And it's actually not only manipulation, but it's misrepresentation, which I call a lie. Like but Shelley, your thoughts on finding out the memo doesn't even say what the senator even tried to present and manipulate the General Brown into. But people are using that to say that might be why he got let go.
So let's be honest here. The issue is that he put in a memo, we have too many white officers. That's the problem.
You just missed that. Emil's looking at the memo.
He did not say that.
All right. So then there's no problem. Then I have no problem with it. I mean, then I don't know what the problem, beyond the fact that he's a Republican and he was being nominated to be Joint Chiefs of Staff by the Democrats, then I don't understand what the issue is. Because he said clearly, I don't
understand why that guy used this letter in that way, because the letter, I would love to, Montoya, may I read it? Because it's short.
I mean, he says in the quote, the senator says, you say here, there are too many white officers.
No,
that's what he says.
No general officer worth a salt would ever say that in an official memo.
Well, I understand that. I'm only going, so you're asking me about the clip. Right. Right. So
the general doesn't seem to run from it. The general doesn't seem to run from it, Emil, just to be fair. He doesn't seem to run from that actual quote.
Right. So my point is,
so you're asking at the memo, and I don't see anything that says anything like that.
Right. I understand that.
I understand reality to make that true.
I understand that. Well, what I'm saying is, one, we know it's a confirmation hearing. Right. So that's the first thing. The thing is that it's a confirmation hearing for a guy that was appointed by the Republican president in his current position, to be not in the position he's being confirmed for, but the position before that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is he clearly says that the goals for applications. I get that. Right. And if, in fact, the senators, because the senator says you wrote here, too many white officers, that's a major problem. That's a major statement. If that's true, I'm only going on what the senator's saying. If that's true, that's a dumb thing to say. Because when you say there are too many white officers or too many Asian officers or too many black officers, the natural thing, the next thing is we got to get rid of some. So that's obvious.
No, that's absolutely not how it works, though.
What I'm saying, when you say you have too much of something, if I say I have too many apples, I got to get rid of some apples.
Yeah, let me, because we got a lot of more clips to get to. I'm just gonna leave it here. So I absolutely thank you, Emil, for bringing up the actual memo, if you will, right? But I will say, even the general didn't handle the senator saying you said this, and made it seem like that is what was said. So we don't. So right now we have a disagreement on that. But I also highlighted that when I highlighted the context that the senator came at him wrong was definitely manipulation still, even with that statement, because I said, and I think Shelley would agree with this, you would just simply say we need more minorities is the correct way to say that and not get ridicule in that manner. But the senator says, I see right here you say this, and the general didn't seem to run from it. So I don't know if y'all are looking at the exact same memo. But let's go to another issue that's running around right now on the internet.
You've been nervous all week, but I ain't afraid of the spooks that sat at the door. These runaway slaves hiding in the White House gonna throw my picture up thinking that I'm gonna be afraid. If you got real courage, don't show my picture. Show the picture of the one that fired the black Joint Chief of Staff from the military. If you gonna show a picture of the CEO of Target, Walmart, McDonald's, and Amazon that does not recognize black dollars or black business. If you gonna put up a picture of the state legislators in Florida that are banning black books. If you gonna put up the picture of the one who is stealing classified information from the IRS and Social Security. If you gonna put up a picture of those that don't want your mama to pay $35 for insulin and your child to pay $35 for inhaler. If you gonna put up a picture of those that are jailing children and separating families. I ain't ever scared. In case you forgot, I'm from the west side of Baltimore. If you got a problem, pull up on me.
Hey, I couldn't wait till tonight. I had to talk about this Jamal Bryant thing, Pastor Jamal Bryant, give him his correct title with all due respect. But dude, you don't know anything. Like, for real, you just tried to make fun of African-American Republicans. Like, you got, like, vociferous with it. You got, like, you put your chest into it, and you complimented us the entire time. Like, calling us spooks who sat by the door.
I ain't afraid of the spooks that sat at the door.
You know that book by Sam Greenlee was all about an African-American man who played a game to learn everything about the FBI and all the tricks and all the things that they do in order to take it back to the hood and basically start a race war. Like, you do know that's what the book is about. A guy that played the game to learn the tricks to do something with them. Like, that's what the spook who sat by the door by the great Sam Greenlee was all about. So calling us spooks who sat by the door is a compliment, you idiot. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. And then the other thing, calling us runaway slaves.
These runaway slaves hiding in the White House gonna throw my picture up thinking that I'm gonna be afraid.
Like, isn't that, like, good? Harriet Tubman was a runaway slave. Like, isn't that who we want to be? Like, you're giving yourself away literally as a house. You're giving yourself away as a defender of the empire. And as a man of God, I would think you should be a defender of the kingdom of God, not the empire of man. I mean, this is sickening. What?
Emil, Shelley, I'll let your own clip steal your response, so we'll start with Emil on this one. A lot of stuff said by Jamal, and then obviously you get Shelley's response. But go ahead and jump in, brother.
First of all, Pastor Bryant was he was on a roll. He did use the exact wrong language, though. I have to say it. You know, Shelley was 100% right. The Spook Who Sat by the Door is a subversive book, and you talk about runaway slaves. Runaway slaves do not end up in the big house. Let's just be very clear. Those two things don't go together, right? So if they're runaway slaves, they ain't in the big house. And if they're in the big house, they ain't runaway slaves. That's not how it works. But to me, minus those mistakes, he had a point. And here's the thing that I get frustrated with. If my brothers and sisters who are on the side of this particular candidate, I need to make sure that I see the evidence of them doing work under the table. And I don't know if they are, and I can't say, like, people like Shelley, I know I can trust he's doing work under the table. I know he's got an agenda that's parallel to what's public. But what I'm concerned about is that people don't know that these people are doing that work, which means if nobody can see it, is it happening? And I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying we don't have any evidence of it, or we don't have enough evidence of it. So what Pastor Bryant needs to do is call people out and say, show me what you're doing when you're participating in the big house. I know they're doing something, but I love to see it. And I think that was his broader message, because he calls out all of these other social ills that his face could have been replaced with. But rather than that, what we see is them making fun of him, which of course they have a right to, because, you know, like Shelley pointed out, he done messed up and said the wrong thing.
All right, go ahead, Shelley.
So there's no point in me reiterating what I said and then what Emil just said. So that off the table. Here's my problem. Not only did he compliment us thinking he was insulting us, he also was wrong in all the things that he said. Every single thing he said has not happened. Elon Musk has not stolen anybody's social security numbers. Joe Biden in 2023 put 52 people at the IRS, 52 people, interns and researchers at the IRS that had access to our information. Nobody said a word about that. Insulin is not going above $35. Remember, it was Donald Trump at first who brought the prescription drug prices down, and then they got put into law by with the Democrats and Senator Warnock, who takes credit for it. But it was an all bipartisan thing. No Republican was voting against $35 insulin drugs. So that's another thing. Third of all, the other things that he said, nothing that he said as criticisms use the face. For instance, we just talked about it. Put the face up of the guy that fired the black 4-star general. No, okay, well, how about this? Let's rephrase that. We're going to put the face up of the guy that hired and put him as head of the Air Force in the first place. All of this stuff. He's a supposedly an intellectual pastor. I don't see him as a street pastor. I see him as a guy standing on a corner, wailing his arms, talking about the world's going to come to an end. He's supposed to be an intellectual. As an intellectual, he needs to know everything that he said was false. All of it came from social media. All of it came from memes. All of it came from silly ideas of leadership. And so that's the problem. Second of all, when he talks about Target and Walmart, there are Walmart and Target in his community. I would like to know if the people who cheered when he said the CEOs of Target and Walmart work at Target or Walmart. Because if they do, they're calling for their jobs to be lost, which is dumb. And I'm sure he's got some single women with children who may work at Walmart or Target or any other retailer, and that's what they do for a living, because they're not a nurse, they're not a doctor, they're not a lawyer, and all these professionals, you know, all the people that I got my black job and they're on a golf course talking about their consultants. There's a lot of black people that work at Walmart that can't afford to have people not shop at Walmart. There's a lot of black people who shop at Walmart who can't afford to shop anyplace else. Okay, so this man is, and what sickens me about that entire video, to be honest with you, is not him. It's the crowd, the congregation cheering at lies, innuendo, stupidity, suicidal tenant, not suicide actual, but mental suicide. And that's what frustrates me so much. The guy, I mean, I just don't like the power. We pay more attention to a pastor, literally to a pastor, than we do to a Thomas Sowell or intellectuals, real intellectuals, people who do the data studies, people, you know, it's just sickening to me. It really is. And The name calling, that was a compliment. But the rest of it, for me personally,
I want to let me Emil jump in here. Any thoughts, Emil, to what you're hearing?
Yeah. So this is the power and sometimes the punishment of our Black church is that we do have the pulpit and therefore we do have the ear of thousands, if not millions. We need to be excellent at that, and that's something that Dr. King was really, really good with. And I go back to him because as an example of how you use your pulpit to inform the people accurately and then move them to very specific actions, it matters significantly. So what he did was he had the ear of the people, and they're not going to fact check anything he says. So his responsibility is to be 100% on point and know exactly what he wants people to do once they leave that high emotional state. Because he whipped them up, and I love that he did. But now we have to have the facts that they can go back to their representatives, local and state, and make sure that the changes that they need to be made are heard with accurate information.
No, I love that. And I'll say this, and this is just, I know we've had some back and forth about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? We've had that back and forth. And I always highlight someone, like, if I feel like not only by working in college admissions, I learn a lot about how it actually works, right? Just having that personal experience. But as a legal studies major, doing a lot of research on, like, that's why I gave the history of, the quotes on that video I sent y'all, right? Like, just explaining the history of the quotas, if you will, and how that's not the law of the land and that's not how DEI is actually running anymore. And so what I always say, in the last 20 years, whether you called it DEI, affirmative action, equal opportunity, whatever name it may have had over the last 20 to 25 years, the reality is the removal of those programs lead to this clip I'm about to show here. So I'm definitely interested in getting y'all thoughts on it. But this clip does not surprise me at all.
This morning, I received an email from one of my long-standing staff members, and Mark runs constituent services for me, and he did so when I was governor as well. Mark sent me this morning, he reached out to send me this article that appeared on the 10th of January in military.com. Military drops recruiting efforts at prestigious Black Engineering Awards event. I'd like it entered into the record, Mr. Chair. First two paragraphs of the article, here they are. The Army and other service branches are abandoning recruiting efforts at a prestigious Black engineering event this week, turning down access to a key pool of highly qualified potential applicants amid President Donald Trump's purge of diversity initiatives in the military. Until this week, Army Recruiting Command had a long-standing public partnership with the Black Engineer of the Year Awards, or BEYA, an annual conference that draws students, academics, and professionals in science, technology, engineering, and math, also known as STEM. The event, which takes place in Baltimore, has historically been a key venue for the Pentagon to recruit talent, including awarding ROTC Corps scholarships and pitching military service to rising engineers. Past BEYA events have included the Army Chief of Staff and the Defense Secretary. This is one of the most dense events we do, one Army recruiter told military.com, on the condition that their name not be used. Our footprint there has always been significant. We need the talent. My staffer, Mark, said to me when he sent me this article, I would never have served in the military if there weren't men and women who looked like me in the recruiting process. Limiting military recruitment to avoid qualified Black applicants in the name of DEI will ultimately hurt our all-voluntary military. I was intending to ask questions about Northcom and Southcom until I got Mark's email this morning. Intentionally avoiding an event chock full of STEM talent and engineers because it happens to be a draw for Black engineers is more than an anti-DEI initiative. It is an intentional effort to avoid certain kinds of people in recruiting.
So in my time in recruiting, without the guardrails of DEI, that's what happens every time. So don't tell me it's not a push for resources. It's a push for resources to get positions that ultimately, when you remove the guardrail, it becomes meritless. That's what actually happens. that statement like it is. Shelley, your thoughts again, because again, this is what happens anytime this happens.
Let me just say this. Those people can still be recruited, right? I'm not saying it was right. I disagree with it. When I sent my email to my contacts at the White House, I said, this is a bad move, right? It's a bad move in every single way, as presented by the senator, Tim, I forgot his name, but anyway, the senator, he's from Tennessee. But that guy that just spoke, I forgot his name. But anyway, it's a bad move. I didn't agree with it. I sent an email to my people saying, look, y'all need to fix this because it's not a good move, right? But the point is that those kids can still be recruited. They still can be recruited in the same way anybody else is recruited to the Army, right? So it's a bad move. You shouldn't have done it, but those kids can still be recruited. The Army, when I was in college, when I first got out of college, my first job was at Young and Rubicam. Young and Rubicam had a whole division. They had separate offices and everything in our office building, where the U.S. Army had an account for minority recruitment. This was in 1984, 85, 86, 87, and all that. The guy that ran it was the account executive. He was working for the Army. He worked for the Pentagon, and he ran the account. And they did this for years. You would see the ads on black shows and movies and places and video and all that stuff. It was a concerted effort to recruit African Americans into the military. And at that time, we saw a large number of African Americans join the military. And a lot of my friends joined up at that time because of, and what they were offering at the time, it wasn't the ads that you see now. The ads back then all talked about free education, get an education, come join the Army and get these resources and take advantage of these things that you can get once you leave the Army or while you're in the Army, right? And so it became an opportunity for jobs, much like it's an opportunity for jobs for rural white kids. I'm in a small town. I got no other options to get out of this town. I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to join the military. And so that's what's going on. I don't agree with it, but that's my take on it. You can still recruit engineers from black HBCUs, black engineers, by going directly to them. And that's the case. Do I think it hurts the overall military? Probably will in 10 to 15 years, because it's an all volunteer Army and it's short-sighted. But I voiced my concern, so I agree.
I respect. Yeah, let me go over that mill real quick. Give me a quick thoughts. I got 3 more cuts to get to before this 20 minutes is up.
For sure.
Yeah, what I'm going to say real quick is, everybody watching, Shelley's email is an example of under the table when you're on the side. As you pointed out earlier, it's an example of that because the assumption is nobody's doing what he just talked about. So it's just cool to see it firsthand on this show. Go ahead, Shelley, real quick.
Well, on my show, I talked about it. I mean, I regularly say things, not regularly, but there are things I disagree with. The DEI thing is an exceptionally confusing thing, right? So you have a program that people think is for black people, but it's not, right? You have a program where other people get.
I got to give Emil.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I want to talk about that too, but it's just we don't have time. Emil, I'm going to give you a response, and then we're going to go to it.
This administration is showing its colors, and this is point blank. It's hard enough to get people to go to the HBCUs because there's 100 of them. They're not going to go, but you can bring 100 engineers worth of from HBCUs, 100 HBCUs worth of engineers to one event. Why wouldn't you? It's brilliant. Not only is it brilliant in terms of DEI recruiting, but these are high quality engineers, period. These are not just engineers. These are high quality engineers. You want them from that pool because the people who show up at these events are usually your shining stars, people who want to be there, who want to further their careers in the field. So it's not only short-sighted, like Shelley said, but it's foolish because it assumes that talent pool isn't valuable. that talent pool is absolutely valuable. Those are people who absolutely see themselves as civil engineers in the Army Corps of Engineers, as engineers all across the military who will not have a chance to get there. Shelley, I love the fact that you think they'll replace that recruiting effort, but they won't. They won't. The people who go to
Well, I don't even think he suggested it. I didn't hear Shelley suggest they will. He said it's going to hurt us in 15 years. Just to be fair to what he said. Let me play this cut, though. Let me play this cut and keep us moving.
Of Doge's biggest contracts that they say have resulted in savings ended up being deleted from that wall of receipts after outlets pointed out that there were errors. And some of the biggest errors in savings are, as CBS first reported, a USAID contract for $650 million that was listed 3 times. As The Intercept first reported, a Social Security contract listed as $232 million instead of $560,000, and an ICE contract that Doge listed as $8 billion, when in reality it was $8 million. And it's important to note that that $8 million ICE contract was a credit line. That means that ICE may have never ended up paying out that total $8 million. And some of these contracts were on the wall of receipts were either already paid or canceled under the Biden administration. So Doge is essentially taking a lot of credit in time for some of these contracts that don't appear to be actually the savings that they say they are.
I know you were working the phones and talking to vendors who appear on this so-called wall of receipts. What did they tell you?
So our colleague Kyle Madura spoke to one of these federal vendors, a Taylor Jones. His company, Culture Point, does leadership and management training. And his company was listed on Doge's wall of receipts as having a contract for almost $10 million. But Taylor Jones told NewsHour that not only was the amount of money wrong, it was actually $100,000, but it was not a guaranteed payment. It was a credit line, and the agreement with the government was never signed.
We never had a contract, and we've actually never had a contract with the government that was, a $10 million contract or even a $1 million contract. So not that we're opposed to it, but it's never happened. So we were a little surprised to start getting calls from reporters about a non-contract that was never executed.
So essentially there wasn't even a contract to delete, Jeff. And when you look at all of this across the board, the math is really not adding up to $65 billion.
There will be people who will say, well, what Musk is trying to do is still a worthy effort, trying to clean up government waste. How much money has the team actually saved so far?
So the actual savings is around $2 billion, according to budget experts that we spoke to. And again, as you noted, Musk says that this is about that these cuts are meant to help reduce the deficit and pay for Republicans' tax cuts. We spoke to Jessica Riedel. She's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. She was also the chief economist for former Senator Rob Portman, a Republican. And she put those so-called savings in context and corrected the record.
At this point, the $2 billion in savings identified by Elon Musk would pay for 1/75th of 1% of the entire national debt. I have not found any legitimate evidence of fraud in the spending that Elon Musk has highlighted. I have found expenditures that a lot of people wish the government wouldn't engage in, such as DEI contracts and Politico subscriptions, but that doesn't make them fraudulent. It just makes them policies that certain people would not like us to be spending money on.
So as Jessica noted there, so far there appears to be no evidence of fraud, despite Elon Musk's claims of it. And she also added that if you did distribute some of that $2 billion or so in savings across taxpayers in America, which is what Elon Musk has said he would like to do, it would basically come to $2.42 per person. So potentially not enough for a cup of coffee and some.
Emil, you reached out to me a week and a half ago saying, hey, I've been looking at some of this stuff, so I wanted to bring the actual factuals to the table. And so as brilliant as Elon's tech partners are, they're not forensic auditors. And that's the difference in looking at the numbers. And that's why you have mistakes. Go ahead.
We actually have an entire office whose job is to forensically audit the federal government. It's called the Government Accountability Office. And in fiscal year 2023, they found and saved taxpayers $70 billion. If you go to the Government Accountability Office website, GAO.gov, it's down. you have to go find their reports elsewhere, because right now they're trying to figure out how they're going to do better than the government's own watchdog. And I'll tell you, the GAO is a hated institution by every administration and every Congress, because they come to your house with a microscope and they want to know exactly where every dollar went. The GAO is the Doge before Doge was Doge, and nobody wants to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it. This is what I want to bring up. We have a process by law that accounts for the dollars through the GAO. That law should be followed by Doge. There's a fraud definition, there's a waste definition, there's an abuse definition by law that GAO follows. So when we're putting all this stuff out there saying Doge is doing this, that, and the other, they're actually not following the law. And that's a problem for me, because we have people who are trained, who understand the law, who have sworn an oath to the Constitution. 3 things I don't know Doge has done. And they are good at their jobs, and they have been a thorn in the side of every administration and every Congress for the past 50 plus years.
Let me highlight this and go to Shelley. So when you asked about the administration taking the oath, 20 people just resigned from Doge because they feel like they are being asked to overstep their boundary. So I just saw that memo this morning, Emil, just to highlight that. Shelley, I'll throw it to you. But the propaganda of everybody getting a $5,000 check, I think politically conscious, we just busted everybody's bubble on that. But your thoughts on what Doge is actually doing versus what the forensic auditors are highlighting, that a lot of the stuff they put out is not actually the case.
So first of all, the 8 million versus 8 billion, Elon had already admitted to that at the White House. He's like, oh, we're going to misstate things or make a mistake, right? So let's take that off the table. The idea that, you said this contract is 23 million, but it's really 20 million, or whatever the case is, the examples that she used, that they used on NewsHour, the idea has shifted from initially, we don't need this, you're cutting mothers, or you're cutting spending, whatever, to now, you're lying about how much it is. The American people that voted for this don't care if it's 2 billion or 60 billion. We want waste and fraud and all that stuff cut. Now, let me say something about the lady who says, we haven't found any fraud. Well, you don't know what you found, because all you found is a contract. You don't know where the contract went. You don't know where the monies went. That guy, Culture Point, he said, they have us listed as a $10 million contract. We have no contract. So you're telling me that Elon Musk's team just found a company and made up $10 million? No, $10 million went to somebody. That's the whole point of this.
Well,
$10 million went to somebody. So now,
Shelley, you got to be fair. If he makes an 8 billion mistake and admits to an 8 million mistake, then the guy says we got a contract, but it hasn't even been $1 million. So it could have been the exact same mistake of it was 100,000 and they put it as 10 million. Like, you got to be consistent.
I'm not saying that.
He doesn't have a contract.
I'm being very consistent.
You're not. You said 10 million went somewhere. What if he said 10 million and it was 100,000, just like he did with the 8 billion and the 8 million? That's not. You can't say that 10 million went somewhere if the 10 million is a mistake.
So let me explain. I'm trying to tell you something. I'm talking about the Culture Point guy, the guy that had $10 million, and he said we don't even have a contract. That's what I'm talking about.
He said
that guy says we don't know what to.
He says we don't have one. I can repeat. He says we don't even have one for $1 million. He didn't say he didn't have no contract. He said we don't have a 10 million. We don't even have one for $1 million. That's not saying I don't have a contract. Right. He's saying the contract is not even worth $1 million. Is what he said.
Okay, so right. Okay, so let's assume that I'm assuming that that's what he's saying, because that's what I heard. We don't have a contract. That's what I heard him say. That's what I heard the guy with Culture Point say. We would like to have a contract, but we don't have a contract. We don't even know. When reporters started calling us up about a contract, we didn't know what they were talking about. So there's a Culture Point someplace that has a contract for $10 million. But the bigger point here, AJC I'm talking about it on my show tonight.
You're making it up, Shelley. I'm going to replay the clip for you. Let's replay the clip. Let's replay the clip.
Yeah, because I don't know where you got that from, bro.
Yeah, the guy is saying we don't have one even for $1 million. He didn't say we didn't have one.
Okay. So of DOJ's biggest contracts that they say have resulted in savings ended up being deleted from that wall of receipts after
control of moving it. I'm not going to play a whole 3-minute clip again.
All right.
But
so forget that. Here's my point.
We don't have one for 10 million. We don't even have one for $1 million. That's not him saying we. Now you're making your point as if he's saying I have no contract at all. That's not.
That's what I'm. Okay, I'm sorry. That's fine. I heard him say we don't even have a government contract, and I heard him say when reporters were calling us about these contracts, I didn't know what they were talking about, but I could be wrong. Fine. My point here is that the AJC just wrote an article. I'm going to talk about it on my show. The AJC just wrote an article about a local company that got a $20 million contract in September 23 to do leadership development and all of this stuff. And only $800,000 has been paid out, because it just started in September 2023. And the article is trying to infer exactly what PBS NewsHour is inferring, is that, oh, it's not $65 billion, it's more like $2 billion. Okay, $2 billion is still $2 billion. The people that voted for this, and then you play the math trick by saying it's only 1%. We don't care about that.
That's
we
not a
want
math trick, Shelley. That's
no,
not
I mean,
math trick. That's not a math trick.
What I'm trying to tell.
Yeah,
what I'm trying to tell you is that we don't care. We just want the wasteful spending to stop. That's what people voted for. So because
you don't care, but I'm using your own example. We talked about this before. We talked about this before, and you used for people that haven't watched this, I'll make it make sense real quick. You actually highlighted that if you're wanting to get rid of your household income, you're trying to save on your household income, and you give the example of your wife getting her nails done. If we're cutting back was your point. We're highlighting you can't. It's not.
That's still my point.
Let me hear this. I know it's still your point.
That's still my point.
Let me show you what's weak about it. Watch this. You're saying be devoid of the percentage thing. You're saying that's a math trick. Well, the math trick is this: $10,000. You say it could be $10,000 a year on her nails based on the numbers you were using. Well, the thing is, you can't leave out the factor that you're bringing in $1 million a year. If you're bringing in $1 million a year, that's why 1% matters. If you're bringing in $1 million a year, you're probably not going to be able to convince your wife not to spend that money on those nails.
I think you missed the point.
You can't leave the percentage out when you want to make a point and say, "Oh, $2 billion is a lot of money." You can say $2 billion is a lot of money, but you can't leave out the other end of the context and say that's a sound decision.
I think you're missing the point. The point is, we don't care who voted for this. We don't care if it's 1% of 1% of 100 or 0.02% of the total budget. We want waste and corruption and wasteful spending gone. That's the first part of what I'm saying. The second part of what I'm saying is they're still cutting. So it's $2 billion today, and they only been doing it for 30 days. It's a $6 trillion budget, my friend, and and we've been looking at cuts for 30 days. So let's call it what NewsHour's own auditor said. It's only $2 billion and not $65 billion. My point is, it's still going to grow because they haven't stopped cutting. Number one. Number two, when we talk about that lady said, I haven't seen any corruption. Of course you haven't. Neither did, to Emil's point, neither did GAO. You won't see the corruption until you drill down to see
all the time. What are you talking about? GAO calls out fraud all the time.
I didn't say that. I said they would not, if there was corruption there that you can see, that it wouldn't have gotten past the GAO. To your point earlier, what I'm saying is what they're seeing now, you won't see the corruption until you see where the money's going. Having a company that says we got a $23 million contract, Wynter Associates got a $23 million contract and it was canceled. You don't know it was corruption because you don't know where the money went that was already spent. That's what the next shoe to drop is. We're arguing about something that just started 30 days ago, and the argument from the mainstream media who wants to criticize
how to do federal contracting. Do you know how many hoops you have to go through in fraud prevention? I'm not saying it's not possible. What I'm saying is to assume that everything he's cutting is fraud is is a bad
That's
assumption.
not what I said. That's not what I said. I said that lady said she hasn't found corruption yet. And I said, you won't find corruption until you see where the money is gone. All you've done is stop the money from going. Now you've got to see where it goes to get the corruption part. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying every contract is corrupt. I'm saying that in order to find the corruption, you have to first see where the money goes. So if you go from 65 billion, so let me go back to the story in the AJC. The article in
you're looking at the wrong end of the corruption scale. It's not down, it's up.
Right.
Of course.
The biggest corruption is up the chain.
Of course it
I'm
is.
talking
That's
about in Congress and that level. I'm not talking about down.
That's what I'm talking about. I agree with you. That's what I'm talking about. You don't know where the corruption is until you see where the money's going. And when you find out the money's going upwards, it's not going downwards. The guy that's getting the contract is not the corrupt guy. It's who he's giving it to are the corrupt people. But that's not, but my point is, I want to end here because we're at an hour, is the AJC has an article today. They're talking about a local business. They signed a $23 million contract in September. They've gotten up to $800,000. And so Doge has that contract being cut as $20 million, whatever, $20 million. The AJC's writing an article is, no, it's not 20 million because it hasn't been paid out yet. That's kind of what PBS NewsHour is kind of trying to do as well. Well, the point is, if the government lists a contract for $20 million to do whatever, and then it awards that contract, that line item is budgeted someplace as an expenditure. Whether the money is going out the door or not, it's listed as an expenditure. So when Doge says we cut this contract for $20 million, they have saved the American government $20 million because that money will not be spent now in that capacity. And so this is what I'm trying to get to you. This is about conscience and all of that stuff, and all of that. What we do here. The fact of the matter is, the media now has shifted from we don't need Doge to it's not really a real number because here are some other aspects of why it's not real.
Those are related arguments, though. If the media says that Doge is not needed, and then they show proof that Doge is not doing what it's set out to do, or certainly not doing it better than GAO, then you don't need Doge.
Yeah, you do.
That's kind of the point.
You do. You know why you need Doge? You need Doge for the corruption part. If Elon Musk at the end of this year
then
only finds
forensic lawyers and accountants who can do corruption work.
Get the right people.
Don't give me no
get the right people to do it.
People who can actually chase the money.
Don't tell me because a fish can swim, it can also climb a tree. They're smart as hell. But they don't do this. You can't tell me putting tech people in to do what forensic people do. I don't care if it's Doge or GO or whatever you call the office. I just want it to be the right people, and don't tell me that somebody smart can go.
So the easiest way and the fastest way to go through a $6 trillion budget, which has rabbit holes all throughout it, USAID going to places like that has rabbit holes all around it, it would take you 15 years with forensic audits to go through it. What you do is you get tech people in, build the AI program, and let it run roughshod.
But nobody knows how those programs.
That's what's going on. That's what's going on. They're writing a program.
Transparency in that.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
I respect that. Right now, they're just focused on the one penny they're getting rid of. I'm not finna jump for joy for that, but I like the approach you just brought out, Shelley. But you're happy about the penny. I'm not happy about the penny right now.
A penny saved. My grandmother told me a penny saved is a penny earned.
Okay, you happy about it? I ain't happy about a penny. I'm not finna jump for joy because they save me a penny. Do something big.
All right.
But I respect the approach, though. Fair enough.
Yep, I'll see y'all.
All right, no doubt. All right, Emil, I'll let you. I didn't get to a couple of cuts, but we'll save them for next time.
No problem.
Any final thoughts? This is what we do.
The work here is to find transparency throughout these processes. And until we see transparency, we're not really seeing anything. He can throw all these numbers out and it might or might not be true. For instance, what Shelley was talking about with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article, it was a blanket purchase agreement. For those people who understand federal contracting, the federal government will issue a blanket purchase agreement of up to 25 million, and then it will purchase within that probably something less because the authorization is bigger than what they need. but they're just trying to make sure they have enough space to do all the work that they're going to do where they don't know for sure exactly what's going to happen.
And to give a little detail, which I know you do government contracting, but just to even give some layman context to what you're saying right now.
Sure.
If you're the government in this example, and I'm the contractor, by giving me the blanket purchase, you're just not limiting me by trying to get it exact prior to, because you're telling me as the government, you need me to do this amount of work or whatever. So by giving me the line item, as Shelley is pointing out, amount for the purchase thing, it allows me to get the work done. So that's why it's done that way. But once everything's over, there will be a line item and an exact number will be put to it, which would be the actual number. And you can't loosely publicly put out there 25 million, as you're saying, just because it's set aside. You can't put that out there as some type of fraud, when the reality is we have to wait until I finish the project to put an actual number on it. So I'm just kind of walking it through for us laymen, because you do government contracts, so you speak to this stuff pretty quickly, and we don't always follow you. So
it's important. But as we hear all of this, it's important that people understand you should be able to trace that dollar back. If there's a cut, you read the Government Accountability Office report, they're very specific. They'll tell you where they found the dollar, what program it came from, and why they were cutting it or why they were challenging it. That is how DOGE should be doing its business. You can build an AI bot, but I can build an AI bot that does anything I want it to do. That doesn't mean it's right. What I want to see is the rules by which they're accounting for all of this work, what laws they're following, and how they're adjudicating each of these contracts. Because Elon Musk says it's fraud or it's waste or it's abuse doesn't make it so. What makes it so is it's a deviation from the mission of the organization, and there should be transparency throughout the process. Here's what we found. Here's why we recommend it for cut. And then by all the numbers, Congress does the cut, because Congress is in charge of the purse, not the president. The president executes the budget. Congress makes the budget. So at the end of the day, all of these recommendations need to go back to Congress so Congress can adjudicate how they're going to spend money for the next fiscal year.
If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. We'll pop up on y'all next week. Don't have a set time. That's how the game go with us. We just have to get together and bring these to y'all. Share these, and we'll close out. And then you're going to see subscribe. All of this is brought to you by the Mental Dialogue YouTube page. But Politically Conscious, again, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. We'll see y'all next week. Just subscribe so you can stay tuned to whenever we pop up. All right, y'all. See y'all.
Peace.